The stars had moved on. Long ago, the galaxy had turned its eyes away from Earth. Once filled with voices, music, light, and dreams, the little blue planet had gone quiet. No signals, no trade, no answers. For the galaxy, Earth had become a ghost memory from the past. Many believed Earth had destroyed itself. Too much power, too many problems. The high councils of other worlds often joked about it. They burned bright, and then burned out. Some called it a lesson in pride. Others just laughed and said humans were never ready to stand among the stars. But not everyone laughed. Kale, a young historian from a peaceful world called Villari, didn't believe in old stories or jokes. He believed in truth. And something about Earth's silence didn't feel right to him. For years, Kale studied old human records, books, and signals. Most were blocked or erased by Galactic archives, but what he found told him something very different from what he had been taught. Humans were curious, brave, sometimes strange, but they were builders, dreamers, survivors, and their silence didn't match their history. So Kale decided to go. It took him 3 years to get permission. Earth was marked as a quiet zone, no one allowed to enter without council approval. But Kale had his ways. He made a deal, signed a risk form, and flew alone in a small exploration ship. No one stopped him. The journey was long, but peaceful. Stars passed his window like dust in the dark. As he got closer to Earth, he felt something strange, a stillness, not outside, but inside him, like the universe itself was holding its breath. And then, he saw it. The blue sphere rose slowly into view. Earth, covered in oceans, clouds, and green land. It looked alive, but the scanner said nothing was moving. No cities, no lights, no ships, just silence. Kale's ship landed in what was once called North America. His screen showed broken roads, tall buildings covered in vines, and nature growing wild. It looked like Earth had been sleeping for a long, long time. He stepped out into the warm air. Birds flew above. Trees swayed gently in the wind. But there were no people. He walked for hours, through empty towns, past quiet machines. No signs of a fight, no signs of panic, just nothing. And then, something strange happened. As he walked through an old street, his scanner beeped, a small signal, weak but real. It came from underground. Kale followed it. Behind a broken wall, he found a hidden door, covered in dirt and plants, almost invisible. He cleared it slowly. The metal was old, but strong. With some effort, he opened it. A dark tunnel led down. He turned on his light and stepped in. The air was dry, but clean. The deeper he went, the stronger the signal became. His heart beat faster, not in fear, but in wonder. After a while, he reached a chamber. It was small, quiet. At the center, a single screen glowed softly. Kale stepped closer. There were no buttons, no controls, just a message, simple, clear, and waiting. It said, "You came to laugh. We never did." Kale stared at it, frozen. He didn't understand. Who left this message? Was it for him, or for anyone who came looking? Suddenly, the screen flickered. Lines of data began to appear. Images, old pictures of Earth, smiling faces, children playing, cities shining at night, rockets rising into the sky, and then, silence again. Kale stepped back, confused. The message repeated, once, twice, then it stopped. He waited. Nothing more came. Outside, the sun began to set, but Kale stood still, eyes on the screen, mind full of questions. Earth was not destroyed. Earth was not lost. It was waiting. But for what? Kale looked around the chamber again. Everything was clean, powered, maintained. Someone or something had kept it working all this time. He whispered softly, "Is someone still here?" No reply, but somehow he felt watched. Not in a bad way, not in fear, but as if the planet itself was listening. The stars had mocked Earth, but maybe they never really understood it. And maybe Earth never needed to answer it until now. Kale didn't sleep that night. He sat quietly inside the chamber, the soft glow of the screen still lighting the space around him. The message hadn't changed. It just repeated once every few hours, simple, calm, and haunting. "You came to laugh. We never did." Outside, the wind moved gently through the trees. Somewhere in the distance, a bird sang once and then stopped, as if even nature was unsure whether it should make a sound. Everything felt too still, too perfect. Kale's mind kept circling the same thought. Earth wasn't broken. Earth was silent, by choice, and silence, he now realized, wasn't weakness. In the morning, he left the chamber and walked back into the open air. The world looked the same as before, untouched, green, peaceful. But now it felt different. Now it felt like something was under the surface, like the entire planet was holding a memory too heavy for words. His communicator blinked. He hadn't even remembered turning it on. A message came through, not from Earth, but from his home world. Report your findings. Is Earth truly empty? Cale looked at the device and didn't answer. Not yet. He didn't know how to explain what he had found. It wasn't just an empty planet. It was a place that had been watching. He walked deeper into the city ruins. The buildings were covered in time. Trees grew through windows. Roads had become paths for flowers and moss. Yet nothing looked destroyed. There were no marks of chaos or panic. It was as if the people had simply left or hid. He entered a structure that had once been a library. The inside was dusty, quiet, but whole. Books lined the shelves. Some machines still sat on desks. When he touched one of them, the screen blinked to life. That was the second moment his breath caught. The machine wasn't broken. It was waiting. Just like the bunker, it asked him one question. Would you like to listen? Cale pressed yes. For the next few moments, he heard something that shook him, not through fear, but something deeper. It was a human voice, soft and calm. A woman, speaking in Old Earth English. To those who find this, we are not gone. We are here, watching, learning. We gave the stars our music, our dreams, our hope. In return, they mocked us, feared us, and closed their doors. So we chose a different path. There was silence. Then the voice continued. Power is not always in action. Sometimes it is in stillness. Sometimes it is in waiting. Then the recording ended. Cale sat for a long time, not moving, trying to understand what it meant. The voice sounded kind, gentle, but underneath it was something else, an old sadness, and maybe something close to disappointment. He began to walk again. As he moved through the city, he saw more signs, not of people, but of presence. Gardens were carefully arranged. Water flowed from clean hidden pipes. Solar panels still followed the sun. The planet was alive, but not loudly. It lived in quiet care. And then, his communicator blinked again. This time, the message was not from Valari. It was unknown. No source, no signal trace. Only 3 words appeared on the screen. You are heard. Cale stopped walking. His breath caught again. He looked around. Trees, sky, ruins. But now he knew. He was not alone. Someone was watching. Not to harm, not to threaten, but to be sure. He didn't run. He didn't call for help. Instead, he spoke back. Who are you? The communicator gave no reply, but the clouds above shifted slowly. The sun moved out from behind them. And for the first time, Cale felt like the entire planet was listening. Not just the people who once lived here, the whole world. Later, he sat at the top of a hill, where a tall building had once reached the sky. From there, he could see for miles trees, rivers, lakes, old roads, and the curve of the earth beyond. The stars above looked different now. Not brighter, not closer, but more silent than before, because now Cale knew the truth. Earth wasn't speaking to him, it was speaking to the stars. And maybe, just maybe, the stars had finally heard something they couldn't laugh at. Cale didn't send a report. Not yet. He needed to learn more, because if Earth had stayed silent for this long, there must be a reason, and he had only just begun to hear the whispers. The stars were no longer laughing, not because they had stopped, but because something had changed, something they couldn't explain. Across distant systems, small things were beginning to happen, too small to cause alarm, but strange enough to make even the oldest minds pause. In the central council chambers of the Valari Union, long range, listeners picked up a tone, just a single tone, soft, steady, and completely unfamiliar. No language, no pattern, not a distress call, not a warning. It was something else. They called it the hum. It appeared first near the edge of the Orion sector, then, minutes later, in the far reaches of the Crevel arm. By the end of the day, over 300 systems had heard it. It was quiet enough to ignore, but persistent enough that no one could forget it. It moved faster than light, reached deeper than sound, and it had no source that the councils met. Scientists checked equipment. Nothing was broken, and still the hum continued. No one linked it to Earth. Not yet, but Cale knew. He had returned to the underground chamber. The message was gone now. The screen was blank, but he wasn't afraid. He simply waited, and while he sat there, a low vibration filled the space around him. He didn't hear it with his ears. It was something he felt in his bones. A soft presence, like a memory returning from deep inside the ground. Then, slowly, the screen lit up again. No words this time, only shapes, circles, lines, waves moving outward. Like sound, like silence becoming form. Cale didn't move. He just watched. The lines pulsed in rhythm with the hum that was now being felt across the galaxy. He spoke softly. "Is this your voice?" The lines shifted. Not yes, not no. Just movement, like a dance. He stayed there for hours, maybe longer. He lost track of time. He stopped trying to record it. Whatever was happening, it wasn't for data. It was for understanding. And understanding, Cale realized, wasn't always a thing you could write down. Outside, night had fallen again. Stars blinked above like small eyes, watching without speaking. The wind carried a kind of stillness that made the trees feel like they were listening to. Then, without warning, Cale's communicator buzzed. Again, no sender, only a message. "The galaxy begins to hear," he whispered to himself. "What are they hearing?" As if in reply, the message changed. Not what. That night, across hundreds of worlds, ships powered down. Not fully, just a momentary blink, as if someone had closed their eyes for a second and reopened them. It happened once, then again. By morning, thousands of navigation systems needed to be reset. Starports reported silent blackouts. Satellites fell still, then resumed, all at the same time. But there was no damage, no loss, no one injured, just silence, arriving and leaving like a breeze. And still, the hum continued. Back on Earth, Cale explored deeper. The cities were no longer quiet to him. He began to notice sounds, distant mechanical shifts underground, gentle clicks hidden in the wind, like someone or something was moving unseen. He followed the hum into the hills, where nature had taken back the land. There, he found something strange, a smooth stone platform, untouched by time. At the center, a single object, a small black disk, floating a few inches above the ground, spinning slowly. He stepped closer. It made no sound, no heat, just gentle rotation. As he reached out his hand, the disk stopped spinning. And the hum disappeared. In that moment, every listening station in the galaxy went quiet. The tone vanished. For exactly 60 seconds, there was nothing, no noise, no signals, no background data. It was as if the stars had taken a deep breath. Cale stood frozen. Then the disk began to spin again. But this time, it played something. A voice, not loud, not sharp, just soft, calm, familiar, that said, "We gave you music, you gave us silence." Then the voice stopped. Cale didn't move. The sky above him remained still. The stars did not flicker, but something was different. Somewhere far away, in the high tower of the Genu Prime Station, the leading xenolinguist dropped her tool and stood in silence. She had heard the voice through the deep channels. In her mind, she felt one clear thing. This was not a threat, it was a presence, and whatever it was, it had always been there, waiting for the moment the stars stopped laughing. And now, the stars were quiet. For the first time in centuries, the stars did not shine with pride. They shimmered softly, almost carefully, as if unsure of their place. Across planets, moons, and deep space stations, people no longer spoke about Earth with jokes or forgetful smiles. They spoke less, actually, not from fear, but from something else, uncertainty. The hum had returned, but not like before. Now it pulsed. It came in slow, steady beats, like a calm heartbeat moving through space. No source, no signal, origin, just rhythm. And across the galaxy, those who had ears to listen found themselves stopping, turning toward it without knowing why. In the core worlds, the Council of Systems met in a silent chamber. Their data was incomplete. Machines had begun reporting patterns they couldn't explain. Perfect gaps in energy flows. Communications lines were open, but no responses came through during certain moments. It was like time itself had chosen to step aside for something older, something quieter. One ambassador finally asked, "Is this Earth?" No one answered. On Earth, Cale had remained close to the stone disk. It did not move again. It did not speak, but the silence around it felt different now, like it had grown fuller somehow. as though the space between each second now held more weight. He walked through the nearby ruins again, more slowly this time. Every window seemed to look back at him. Every shadow seemed to hold a memory. But still, no people, no movement, just perfect, intentional stillness. He passed a school. Its doors were open. Inside, desks were still in place. Small books lay on tables. He picked one up. It was worn, soft from time. The cover had faded, but the pages were dry. He opened it to the first page and found a handwritten line. "If the stars do not listen, we will teach them silence." He stood there for a long while, the book held in both hands, his heart heavy but steady. They had left messages everywhere. Not cries for help, not signs of panic, just thoughts, writings, choices. A museum not far from the school held more clues. Cale entered through a side path, overgrown with ivy and wildflowers. Inside, the air was still clean. The power was low but steady. Lights blinked quietly in corners. In the main hall, a projection activated as he walked in. A human figure appeared, not real, not solid, but lifelike. A man in simple clothes, calm eyes, speaking slowly. History repeats itself until silence teaches the lesson. The image said. Cale sat and watched. The projection showed images of early space contact, friendly messages, open hands, and then the records stopped. The files beyond that point were locked, even here on Earth. Cale stood up. "Why can't I see what happened?" The image responded, "You are not ready to understand the silence." That phrase stayed in his mind. Not ready, not refused, just not ready. Later that day, a quiet pulse touched his communicator. It wasn't a message, just a shift in tone. He checked the device. A new file had been added, one he did not download. He opened it. It was not a voice, not data, just a long map. Star systems connected by soft golden lines, weaving across the galaxy. At first, he thought it was just old charts, but then he noticed something. The golden lines didn't follow known paths. They curved, crossed, and met in ways that no traveler would take. But the end of every line pointed to the same place. Earth. He traced one of the lines backward and found it ended at Genu Prime, a massive station known for its influence across trade and communication sectors. Another line reached Valari, his home. The map didn't show routes. It showed listeners, everyone who had heard the hum, everyone who had paused. Every voice that had once mocked Earth was now being drawn back to it, not forced, not summoned, just guided. Across the galaxy, those who felt the pulse began to remember small things. A song heard long ago, a story about humans that didn't end in ruin, a moment of curiosity, a quiet moment. It was as if Earth had chosen to speak, not through power, but through memory. And still, the stars dimmed, because now, for the first time, they realized something they had never understood. Earth had not wanted attention, it had offered connection, and when that offer was ignored, it did not cry out, it simply became silent. But silence, when chosen, holds more strength than sound. And now, the stars were beginning to feel that silence, reaching them not as punishment, but as a question. Were they ready to listen? Cale looked up at the sky. He wasn't sure what Earth had done. He wasn't sure how, but he knew one thing for certain. The silence was not empty. It was full of something they had all forgotten, and now they were beginning to remember. The stars once believed silence meant nothing, that it was simply the space between action, a pause between voices. But now they were learning silence could also mean choice. And when Earth chose silence, it was not out of fear, it was something else entirely. Cale wandered farther into the city, his thoughts no longer about discovery, but about understanding. The deeper he explored, the more Earth revealed, not through words, but through quiet signs left behind. In an old tower near the center of the ruins, he found a sealed door, not hidden, but heavy with age and purpose. The panel beside it flickered to life as he approached. A soft hum, now familiar to him, pulsed beneath his feet. The door opened slowly. Inside, the room was circular, lined with smooth metal walls and a single glowing table at the center. It was covered with light, not bright, not sharp, just a gentle, soft blue that shimmered like water. Cale stepped closer. The lights moved, forming shapes. He watched as images appeared, scenes from the past. Earth, not as it was now, but as it had been. He saw gatherings of people, smiles, buildings rising, children pointing at stars, and then meetings with others, visitors from other worlds. The images shifted faster. Conversations, trade, laughter, then silence. The figures from the stars began to step back. The images slowed. Words were said. Faces turned cold. Kale leaned in. What happened? The table responded by showing one final image, a great meeting hall. Humans standing tall, calm, listening. And then, the stars walking away. There was no destruction, no falling, just leaving. The humans didn't follow. They stayed where they were. Together, their projection ended. Kale realized something then. Earth had not been thrown away. Earth had been left behind, and they had allowed it. He sat beside the glowing table and closed his eyes. Everything pointed to one truth. Humanity had reached beyond their world, offered connection, and then stepped back when the offer was denied. But why? As if hearing the question, the table flickered once more. A voice began to speak. It was the same calm voice from before, not loud, not sad, simply clear. You feared our speed, you feared our questions, you feared our spirit, so you chose silence. Kale opened his eyes. The room did not change, but the air felt different, like the space itself was filled with memory. The voice continued. We saw your fear, we heard your silence, and we answered with our own. Outside the tower, winds began to move in slow, wide circles. The trees didn't shake, they leaned gently, as though bowing to something unseen. Kale stood and looked out through the high windows. From this view, he could see the full city, stretched far into the hills, and in every corner, lights were beginning to blink soft blue and steady across Earth. Something was waking, not machines, not weapons, just presence. Kale's communicator lit up. Another message, without a sender. You understand now, he whispered, not fully, but more than before. And the device replied, then it is time. Time for what? He didn't know, but he felt ready to see more. Back at the central station of the Valari Union, leaders watched as Earth's image appeared again on their monitors, still silent, still unresponsive, but now, glowing slightly at the edges. Scanners could not explain it. Reports were uncertain, but something in every leader's heart had changed. No one wanted to speak first. For the first time in their long history, the council sat in full silence. They had once ruled with words. Now they waited with none. In space, across far systems and ancient colonies, ships halted mid. No orders were given, yet they paused. Pilots stared out of windows. Engineers looked at blank screens. The hum, the gentle rhythm from Earth, now matched something inside them. A shared awareness. Back on Earth, Kale returned to the stone disk. It had begun to spin again. This time, it showed stars, not Earth's, but others. Systems far from here. Worlds full of voices, but the stars were dim. And the message returned. You were ready to see. Kale stepped back, and the disk lifted slightly, casting soft light in all directions. And in the sky above him, the stars blinked one by one as, if nodding in slow understanding. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Earth had waited in silence, not to hide, but to watch, to learn, to offer one final message, not in anger, but in peace. Not look at what we can do, but look at what we chose not to do. And now, the galaxy was beginning to understand. The most powerful voice was the one that did not need to speak at all. Asterisk across the galaxy, quiet had become the new language. No commands, no sirens, no alerts, just a gentle growing stillness that wrapped around every planet, every station, every ship. It did not demand attention, it invited reflection. And in that reflection, something deep began to shift. Leaders who once ruled with pressure now sat in long meetings where words failed them. Trade routes that had buzzed with activity slowed. Science labs paused their research without knowing why. In schools, children stopped to listen not to lessons, but to the space between them. And all of this began the moment Earth spoke again. It was not a broadcast. It was not loud. It was a presence, a soft pulse in the background of everything, like a memory floating just under the surface of sound. The kind of presence that made people stop mid-thought and look at the sky, wondering why they felt like they were being remembered. Kale remained on Earth, where the silence was now filled with motion, subtle, intentional, and calm. He no longer searched for answers. He followed signs. Each step led him deeper into the world's design. What once looked abandoned now revealed purpose. Solar panels still turned toward the sun. Clean water still flowed. Lights lit up before he entered rooms. Everything worked not because it had to, but because someone had made sure it would. He was not alone, even if he saw no one. One morning, while resting near the edge of an old city garden, his communicator lit up. It showed a map, not of Earth, but of the galaxy. Every system he had studied, every world he had learned about, now connected by thin golden lines, glowing softly. A voice followed. It was not human. It was not machine. It was something in between, clear, balanced, patient. You may return now. He didn't move at first. He had questions. So many questions. But he had also learned something here. Not every question needed an answer, and not every answer needed to be spoken. Still, he asked one thing. Why now? The voice replied after a pause. Because now, you are listening. Kale understood. He prepared to leave Earth, not forever, but just for now. His ship, which had rested quietly near the landing site all this time, was still functional, untouched, clean. The dust had settled around it, not on it. As he entered the cockpit, the hum returned, not in the ship, but in his heart, a familiar rhythm that now felt like part of him. He took off slowly, rising above the green and gold surface of the planet. Clouds rolled beneath him, rivers shimmered, forests swayed like oceans of quiet thought, and then, space, the stars blinked around him as he crossed through Earth's atmosphere, now sensing their presence in a different way. But something had changed. The moment his ship broke into orbit, his controls flickered, not from failure, but from connection. New symbols appeared on his screen, guiding him. They pointed him toward a distant signal, one being sent to every corner of the galaxy. At the same time, it was Earth's voice, the same tone, the same calm. But now, it came with a message, a simple one. We won't speak often. We don't need to. But you will feel us now, always. And with that, the signal ended. Back across the stars, strange things began to happen. In the sky above Genu Prime, satellites that had remained unchanged for decades realigned themselves without command. On the mining world of Turnax, heavy storms paused suddenly, as if waiting. In the floating cities of the Drea system, all public screens flashed the same map Kale had seen just for one breath, then faded. No systems crashed, no alarms sounded, but the message had been delivered. Not through fear, through presence. Earth had chosen silence for a reason, not to punish, to teach. And now, the lesson had reached every system, every colony, every orbit. Kale watched from his ship as Earth grew smaller behind him, yet somehow, it felt closer than ever. It was not the planet that had changed, it was the way the galaxy saw it. They once called Earth forgotten. Now, they would remember it in every moment of quiet, and no one, no matter how powerful or proud, would speak of Earth again without lowering their voice just a little. Because sometimes, the most lasting change doesn't arrive with sound, it arrives when everything else becomes quiet.